All right, for you vets that are out there that are trying to figure out, where do I go from? I know there's VA disability out there, and I know I could qualify, but I'm not exactly sure how to figure out what I can qualify for, what I'm eligible for, and that's what I'm going to do in this video. Is I'm going to talk to you about how you can use your medical records, both service treatment records from when you were in the military, private records after you got out, and then anything that you've used from the VA, any type of medical records. I'm going to just essentially show you how to kind of look through these records to find clues, to find things that you can submit just to kind of get started, just to give you kind of a jump up on this, so you can get maybe an easy win or two. So I hope this helps you out. Before I jump into it, though, could you please hit the subscribe button and or the thumbs up if this content is helpful for you. Okay, the first thing that you want to do if you're in this process, and this is pretty much exactly how I started, with a few hiccups along the way, and I'm hoping that some of my fallacies can help you out and help you save time and energy. The first thing that I would do if I had to start all over is I would go out and I would grab all of my service treatment records. That's the first thing, because there's a lot of valuable information in there that you probably have forgotten about. I know a lot of us say that we didn't go to the doctor, but we may have actually went, and so some of these things could already be documented in there very well. But you want to get your private records, your service treatment records, and then any VA records. And you want to have that. You want to have a highlighter. And you want to, the first mistake that you could make is just looking through there real quick and submitting a claim without like coming up with a clear, path of how you're going to do this. So I would grab those records and either, highlight them, like highlight important parts in there that you see, highlight things that maybe you had some complaints, at the doctor's office when you were in the military, and now you're like, oh man, like I've been complaining about that since back then, and now I'm currently dealing with, whatever it is, bad knees, bad back, sinusitis, whatever. So you're looking for things in those, service treatment records that look like, clear diagnosis, like you got diagnosed with something back then. But if there's nothing, no diagnosis given, look for symptoms of things you currently have right now. If you started complaining about your knees or your ankles or your elbows and you currently have a disability, but those symptoms of complaints are in your service treatment records from years ago when you were active duty, that can be very helpful in establishing or anchoring your condition to service, and that's really important. Some other things that you want to see if that could be in not only your service treatment records, but maybe in your private records or your VA records, like your post-service, could be things like the frequency and severity of symptoms, or really the symptoms period, and how bad they are. Also, if your doctor mentioned like how your condition impacts your life, because maybe you said something not even thinking about what you were doing, you want to like kind of highlight and know where that's at. And you're doing this, you're highlighting these because you're going to use them later in your claim. Like you're going to make a real claim to the VA to try and like state your case. And so if you don't do a quick review of all your records, whether they're electronic or paper, you won't remember where they are and go back to them. You can also grab little sticky notes if they are paper and tab them out, because you're looking at doing this as a strategy. All right, so next, and I kind of went over this already, but like, do your records show a clear diagnosis of a condition? And this is important for either your service treatment records or your current records, things that are like you're looking at right now. One of the things that the VA requires is a current diagnosis of a condition. So, do you have it? Do your records mention how long you've had the condition for, or do they talk about you having those symptoms while you were in service? because that could be very important as well as having something going back to active duty service, especially if you had that in your service treatment records. And then, of course, does it talk about the impact and severity, etc. All right, so what to do next? Like, once you have those things, you want to look for gaps in your evidence, okay? We know that we need to have the big three. If you don't know what the big three is, I'm going to go over that really quick. Current diagnosis, okay? We can't necessarily submit a claim without having some sort of current diagnosis from a doctor that we're making the claim for, okay? And then we need to have a service connection. We need to have something that's happened in service, an event, an exposure, loud noise exposure, like some sort of, a chemical exposure like a burn pit, an accident, a trip and fall, break an ankle, like something must have happened in service. And then there, of course, that's your nexus between your current diagnosis and your service. So you have to have those things. You also have to have evidence to show how bad this is. Like, is it like a 1, a 2, a 3, or 4, or 5? And, just if you're not aware, the VA uses criteria in the percentages. So 10% rating would be for, this condition, and depending on whether or not it met the criteria inside the 10%. And then some conditions have a 30% and a 50% and onward up until 100. So do you have evidence to help the VA determine your rating? And if you're interested in knowing where that's at, it's in 38 CFR. You can Google it. Google 38 CFR plus whatever your condition is, and it'll tell you that this condition is rated at 10%, 30%, 50%, and it'll tell you what the specific criteria is. So now you want to make sure that you have those things. And then you also, when you don't have all those things and you do have gaps, you want to use non-medical evidence to help address those gaps. So like some good examples of that is, we're trying to prove service connection. But like we don't have any medical evidence to prove that in our service treatment records. We don't have any evidence to say that like you injured yourself during a deployment and you messed up your knee really bad, but you never went to the doctor. So can you show some non-medical evidence to help address that gap and support your theory? Yes, you can. Like maybe you served with 2 friends that witnessed your fall and they write up a buddy letter to help explain that. And, they provide the information. They provide like when it happened, what happened, who else was there, like all the details that, that they need to provide in that statement to help prove that you did in fact injure yourself. Some other ideas of things that, could be non-medical evidence that might be able to help the VA determine what your rating would be like, let's say you have a mental health claim, but you want to really be able to show impact. So you have your spouse write a letter to the VA that talks about like how your condition impacts the family. Or another one could be having your employer write a letter, or just showing, a slip, like a leave slip to show how many times you've had to miss work for something. Other examples of non-medical evidence could simply be personnel information, like maybe orders to show that you were on a certain deployment to prove that you were in that area at the time where you're claiming the incident or injury happened. Okay. Other ideas could be personnel records, like maybe your performance reports showing that, after, some traumatic incident in your life while you were in the military, your performance reports went from really, really good to really, really bad consistently. And so those are just some ideas of things that you need to do. Now, just quickly, I'll say that I have a brainstorm worksheet that's free. If you type in brainstorm down in the comment section below, I'll give that to you. And it kind of prompts you to go through your service treatment records and look for symptoms, look for things that you may have reported back then that you can start putting down on this piece of paper or this Google Sheets document that I created. and then answer a few questions about your current diagnosis, and like whether or not you have enough information or evidence, or at least being able to like articulate whether or not you have service connection. It just runs you through like a few like exercises where you can kind of document whether you have it, like a checklist, so to speak, and it's free. If you want to just type in brainstorm down below, I'll send that to you in a swipe file, and I think it might be able to help you kind of get the juices flowing on what you could be missing from the VA or where to get started. All right, listen, you don't have to do this alone. There's a lot of free education out there here on YouTube, Reddit, Facebook groups, etc. You also have VSOs, Veterans of Foreign War, VFW, American Legion. Just Google that stuff, and they're out there to help you out. And those guys are free. Accredited agents, I think they charge. Attorneys obviously charge, but VSOs can help you out with this, and can be really useful, especially if you already know what you want to get done or you have an idea. They can help get you to that. So definitely check that out. All right, listen, if you like this type of content, you're trying to understand the VA claims process, feel free to subscribe to my channel. I try to put out information that I've learned in the process, and hopefully you'll be able to use that information to advance your claims, to get the rating and the service connection that you deserve. You can also check out my website. It's free, informedveteran.com.